Earlier in this series, we explored the noble households, those honorable spirits that guide and protect the Sylvaneth, and today we're going to take a darker turn. As we explored in our video on Alarielle and the Song of War, the Sylvaneth tend to operate in seasons. They have many more seasons than we do, but life has a very natural order that they subscribe to. But what if something goes wrong? What if you could be stuck in a season, much like Alarielle was? What if you were stuck in a cold and bitter one? What type of Sylvaneth does that produce? Today we're going to be exploring the Outcasts. They have a mysterious origin. We're going to talk all about the possibilities there. We're going to explore the darkness that looms in this army of life. I'm talking about the Spite-Revenants and Drycha Hamadreth. Let's start with what they are. The Outcasts are a breed of Sylvaneth that are filled with hate. They inhabit the darkest and most foreboding of woods in the realms, and they're cut off from the full breadth of the Spirit Song, that harmony that unites and binds all Sylvaneth. In fact, they can only hear a single note of the song, and that is the Song of War. And this does terrible things to their minds. They're constantly racked by this kind of bloodlust. The drum of battle is constantly echoing in their minds, and they become slowly madness incarnate. It's always conflicting with their nature to create as Sylvaneth with this drive to kill. They look dark. They kind of look like evil imps trapped inside trees and such. So where did they come from? Well, first off, they are clearly of Sylvaneth. No one denies that they are kin. And there's some theories about their origins. Some believe that these are spites, like these little forest spirits who tried to become Sylvaneth but became something darker in a tragic accident, apparently. Some believe they were soul pods that were either tainted themselves or planted in evil soil. We do know it's possible to be planted in basically bad ground, corrupted by chaos, so that it has some sort of negative effect on whatever grows out of it. That's why the whole point of the Wardens of the Everqueen story arc was to get Alarielle to a place that wasn't corrupted. Some believe they are Sylvaneth who have given into despair or somehow broke an oath to Alarielle, and so this is either punishment or some kind of natural consequence of those actions. Regardless, everyone agrees, when I say everyone I mean all the other Sylvaneth, agree that they are a dark reflection of an otherwise bright race. So there's a bunch of theories going on, but it's important to note exactly when they showed up. There's a time in Sylvaneth history that no one really knows about called the Shrouded Season. This is a dark time of forgetfulness that no Sylvaneth can remember. Basically, Alarielle did a mind wipe and deleted these memories on a species-wide level. The Sylvaneth understand they have missing memories. They remember some of these creatures are extremely old and have long lineages, so there's just this gap in time that they cannot remember. No idea what happened, and they ask themselves what was so bad that it required this huge purge of information. The only one who actually knows the answers is Alarielle. Regardless, this is when the Outcasts come into existence and when they showed up. So this thing happens that no one can remember. We all know that our memories were deleted by our god. And then from that, this other kind of side race of Sylvaneth that's really dark and twisty comes out of nowhere. And it's interesting to note that if you look at the timeline in the Sylvaneth Battle Tome, the Shrouded Season came right after the War for Life began, right when Chaos fully invaded Ghyran in mass. So, some theorize that the Outcasts are a result of some kind of chaos influence. Like we said before, maybe the soul pods were corrupted, or the ground was, something like that. However, the thing is, all of these theories, whether they're breaking oaths to Alarielle by not showing up to fight, or spites that were somehow corrupted, becoming Sylvaneth and it not working, all these things kind of fit somehow. You can make them all wiggle into the coming of chaos. So they're all still valid theories, even with the added information of when it happened. Some also see this, the Shrouded Season, as the time when Alarielle's spirit became kind of full of despair, the despondency that we find her in during the Realmgate Wars. And it would be very incredibly interesting if all three events were related. Chaos comes in, something tragic happens, it breaks Alarielle's heart, and then this new race comes out of nowhere. There's a lot of factors at play with this mysterious origin. Because putting that all together, again, something horrible happened that required a species-wide memory wipe. A new subspecies comes into existence, and now the main Sylvaneth houses want little to do with them because they see there's something different about them. If they fight together, the Outcasts always stay off to the side. No, they're not allowed to mingle with the rest of the Sylvaneth. Because their origins are so mysterious, no one even knows if whatever makes a Spite-Revenant is contagious, so we don't want them around us. Let's start talking about the individual units. We're going to start off with the Spite-Revenants. They gather in large numbers, so much so that they really reflect the noble household spirits. In fact, they look a lot like their cousins, the Tree Revenants, when it comes to being the most numerous part of their army, or at least the fighting force of the noble households. And of course, they look similar in many ways. They're kind of this half-spirit thing coming out of a half-tree. They have the numbers and the organization to be a standing army, and that's pretty much where these similarities end. Because these are not disciplined ranks of warriors. They hurl themselves at the enemy, thrashing and slashing, screaming wildly the whole time. There is a madness in their eyes and a frenzy about them. Where a dryad might sing a low dirge, a song of war, these scream and screech like a feral animal. It's nerve-wracking to their enemies. They drench themselves in blood throughout the entire battle, and the level of butchery that they inflict is shocking to the Sylvaneth and makes them a little more than cautious. And really that's all there is about the Spite-Revenants. They're kind of this dark copy and paste, if you will, of Tree Revenants, and that makes them very fascinating because you're looking at them and they look familiar if you're a Sylvaneth, but there's just something evil about them, something feral and dark in them. Evil might be a strong word, but certainly dark, that you don't want around you. It repulses you a little bit. And that brings us to Drycha Hamadreth. Because who would ever want to associate with the kind of spirit feral tree imps like these? Well, there's one twisted soul that does, and even asserts herself as their regent. Drycha is a truly ancient spirit born of hate and malice, and she comes all the way from the old world. In the Age of Sigmar narrative setting, we find her as a soul pod. However, her story doesn't start until the Age of Chaos. Meaning this entire origin story of the Sylvaneth, Drycha has not been a part of whatsoever. Age of Chaos begins, she's still not there, there's this season of shrouding, still not there, and then when Chaos, it seems like, is all but going to take over the realm, Alariel, out of desperation, plants the seed of Drycha. She saw it as a necessary evil. Because truth is, Drycha is an unhinged and monstrous being, so Alariel kept her away. But during the Age of Chaos, monsters were just what was needed. So taking this barbed and shrapnel-ridden seed, Alariel plants it in a hateful chasm, as it's described, called the Hamadrithal. It's a cavern that has sort of a malign sentience. We learned from things like Gur and so like that even land rock formations of that can have kind of a spirit in and of themselves. And so this was apparently a very malicious spirit in this kind of natural cavern formation. And we learned in the Realmgate Wars that where a soul pod is planted greatly affects them. They take on the aspects of whatever kind of earth they're put in. If heroic battles happen there, you put a soul pod in there, you get a great shining noble hero. Alariel herself was planted in a place that had a lot to do with camaraderie and bravery and last stands, and so that's what she is now actively being. So she takes this already angry Sylvaneth soul pod and puts it in this super malign, evil, sentient cave, and it fills Drycha with power and malice and cruelty. And what was once a branch wraith has become a monster and a living engine of war. In her new form, she is empowered by the malice of the Hamadrithal. She grows in stature. Like the Outcast, she has this broken mind about her, and she goes from rage to depression uncontrollably. She lashes furiously at both. In addition to that, she is still suffused with the power of Girain, and all manner of these little malevolent spites go to her. The Flitter Furies bask in the heat of her rage, and the Squirmlings feed on her sorrow. That is a really long and lengthy and fantasy way of saying that every part of her has been weaponized, her body and her mind. If you look at her rules in the actual game, they certainly reflect this. And at her sort of birth, we'll call it that, she let out a spirit song of her own. It is a horrific dirge of war, and it drew all the wayward outcasts to her. And it's interesting to note, while we're talking about spirit songs, that the Song of Alariel has no effect on her. Alariel cannot control Drycha, but still refuses to destroy her because, frankly, this is a good time to have someone who's just a wrecking ball who hates chaos. But if Alariel were to put out a call for help, Drycha does not have to answer. Because she has her own mission. Drycha's mission is to kill any non-Sylvaneth. She'll work with some, like she might work with a Stormcast army, but it's always a means to an end. Doesn't care about you or your ideology. She wants everything that's non-Sylvaneth torn down so that the nature of the realms can blossom and grow. So what makes these particular units extremely fascinating? Well, frankly, there's so much. This is a section of the book that I was super surprised by. The shock value here and how different they are to other Sylvaneth is astounding. Because if you look at the army as a whole, you have a bunch of these cool tree druid dudes, and then this hulking psychopath made of honeycombs that's just like raging against the machine trying to kill everything. And the book does a great job of really balancing information with mystery. I'm very critical of a lot of battle tomes that have a lot of mystery because we just don't have enough information to find them interesting. I struggled a lot with the Seraphon book because there's conflicting information between that and the Malign Portent story. Beast Claw Raiders is like they didn't give us anything firm to chew on with like the Everwinter, but this section does a fantastic job. It nails it when it comes to mystery. Because we know like a lot about 90% of the units in this book, but there's this one section that we just don't understand. We know something happened during the Shrouded season. There was this pivotal event that created an entire subspecies of damned Sylvaneth. It's enough information there to be like tantalizing. I want to learn more, but I have enough to understand what might have happened, a few theories, and that's how you do mystery. You give us enough to want more. The fact that this whole event is wiped from their memories collectively as a species is massive. Because these are near immortal trees that revere knowledge and wisdom, so having a huge gap of time is a big deal. It's not nothing. And as we've talked about multiple times on this channel, the idea of identity, a lot of it is based on your memories, your accrued experiences, so if something is deleted, what kind of person should I be now that I'm not because Alarielle took this from me? What wisdom should I have in this moment that I don't have access to? We talked about this a lot with the Stormcast Eternals, but the difference is here is that Stormcast Eternal memory loss is sort of a byproduct of their reforging. It's not intentional. There's no evidence to suggest that Sigmar wants their memories stripped away. But it is different when Alarielle intentionally deletes an entire memory file from her and people, like her whole species. I think that's kind of hard to fathom, and I find it very fascinating. I like how they relate to the main kind of body of Sylvaneth, but they're certainly very separate. Not hearing the Spirit Song is huge, and isolation is maddening. You have no good input. There's no hearing the hum of life that makes you happy and serene. You don't hear the life being made around you, and you don't perceive the progress that has been made with the coming of the Age of Sigmar, meaning chaos being pushed back a bunch. You don't see that progress because you're just kind of left alone, filled with hate, constantly being aroused for war, looking for someone to vent your rage on. Then out of nowhere, Drycha pops up and starts singing a song of her own, which is just awesome, right? It's just this totally unique thing. I imagine it's like if someone was playing a piano, then someone else across the room hits a key from like an out-of-tune organ. It's like a super harsh, different note, but it resonates in kind of the broken minds of all the outcasts. And last little thing here is that the dark side of things adds a lot of depth to the faction. This way it's not all happy trees, hippies, and gardeners. Something has some teeth. There's some kind of strangeness here. There's a wide range of emotions and stability showcased. You have darkness and light even within the same faction, Alarielle versus Drycha, and not many factions have that same kind of pull of light and dark internally. Meaning, yes, as a grand alliance, you can have like Stormcast being noble and super good, and Daughters of Cain being, misguided, manipulated, and just wanting to bathe in blood. But internally in a single faction, I can't think of another one that has such kind of a yin and yang. And it's great for storytelling, because these are the kinds of struggles that lead to epic narratives. In real life, members of a country fight and argue about what to do. They are all collectively of one purpose, but they can have polar opposite approaches in how they kind of deal with conflict. This kind of internal friction makes the actions of nation so interesting. It's why people write history books. And I can't think of another faction that kind of demonstrates this so clearly. So friends, that is everything there is about the Outcasts, the Spite-Revenants, and Drycha. I hope you enjoyed this, and I look forward to seeing you in my next Age of Sigmar lore video. Thank you so much for watching, and happy wargaming.